Hi, everyone. Welcome back to our podcast. I am Kelly Birmingham. This is a 25-year look across the spectrum, chronicling and discussing my 28 now years working in the field, working in autism and developmental disabilities in the ABA space. And I like to take topics that I've heard come up that are recently sort of new topics and adds my 28-year perspective on it. And more importantly, add the perspective of a caregiver. So with me is always my partner in crime, Jen Lucero, mother to Dylan and Ethan. Hi, Jen.
Hey, Kelly.
Welcome back.
Woohoo. Let's do it.
All right. Before we dive into our podcast, let's give a shout out to our sponsor, SitePro. They offer a wide range of engaging and practical continuing education courses developed by BCBAs for BCBAs. You can visit their website at SitePro to see the complete CEU library, including all of our podcasts, which BCBAs can listen to while they're driving or hanging out and get CEUs for free. So that's cool. All right. So today's topic, as most of these topics came from a discussion I had with a bunch of different BCBAs in different organizations. And I am going to be, for those listening, I'm going to be referencing some of what I talk about today. The CAS guidelines, the Council of Autism Service Providers, has taken over our practice guidelines. They used to sit with the BACB. CAS now hosts them, and these are considered our practice guidelines. So if you have never heard of that, you should go to the Council of Autism Service Providers website and look at the BCBA ABA guidelines, because it's called the Applied Behavioral Analysis Practice Guidelines for the Treatment of Autism Spectrum Disorder. And it is guidance for healthcare funders, regulatory bodies, service providers, and consumers. And these are the guidelines that really we all should, we're all held to, and they are used often, and we're heavily involved in with insurance companies and getting them on board and doing the right thing. So there's a new third edition that is not out yet, but I do have a copy of it because I am a Council of Autism Service Provider member and an active member. And I was able and privy to be able to read through this draft version. So this will be coming out soon. But the topic I'm going to talk about today is service delivery hours delivered. Okay. So Jen, you've experienced this before. So when a BCBA is working and doing an assessment with your child, they are supposed to consider what is medical necessity. And then from that, determine all of the goals that are needed. This guideline was the first to break things down into a comprehensive ABA model or a focused ABA model, which thrilled me because my social skill groups was very specifically a focused ABA model back in 2004, and people thought I was crazy.
Yes. No, it was wonderful.
When it came out, and I was like, here you go, people, focused model, we're focused on these skills. But what happens is when BCBAs assess children and families, and you've gone through this 100 million times, we're supposed to look at treatment necessity. We're also supposed to look at what the caregiver is looking for. And then from there, we determine treatment goals. And then the goals determine how many hours of service we think we should deliver.
Yes.
Right? There are not good guidelines to make those determinations. I myself have a decision tree model that I have used over the years. And what I do for BCBAs listening is I first look at the severity of the autism symptoms, right? There's either like light severity, moderate severity, or more severe severity. There's level 1, level 2, level 3. I also then look at what the family wants in their life. Right? A lot of BCBAs are not doing this, I've recently learned. And what they've basically said is if you have severe needs, or you're in a younger child with early intervention, then you must have a comprehensive program, which is anywhere up to 40 hours a week. Right? And so, okay, that's great. So what I have recently learned is that 25 to 40 hours a week for a comprehensive program. What I have recently learned is there are ABA providers who are telling families, let's say the recommendation was made. And I also heard that some companies are telling everyone to do a comprehensive program for 25 to 40 hours, no matter what, because autism is autism. And so I've learned that there are some of these companies, and I was furious, that tell families, if you can't commit to all of these hours, you cannot have our service.
Wow.
And I know the companies. I've been told some of the companies that are doing that. BCBA is listening to this, may have companies saying that. They're saying, we can't deliver the service to you. You should go somewhere else. What do you think about that, Mom?
Well, it's pretty crazy. And I mean, when you're talking about this, is there, just wondering, is there like a certain age range, or is this just a broad like statement? Like, you know what I mean? Like trying to consider a couple of things. First of all, it sounds crazy to me. But you know, I think people have to understand and recognize too, like, you know, first of all, families and caregivers and parents or whoever want to do, clearly they want to do as much as possible to help support their individual that they're, you know, love with autism.
Yep.
But you know, there's a cycle, and it depends on what's going on. Like when Dylan was diagnosed and started treatment, like at an early age, there's a lot of different components. So yes, of course, I'd love to do 25 to 40. I would love to do the max, right? But considering certain things like you know, what other services or medical intervention is happening at the time. Like,
Right.
I mean, at one point, Dylan, you know, he was going 5 days a week for services when he was first diagnosed at 4. And that wasn't, you know, that was including, there's a lot of factors. I mean, he wasn't communicating. So he was having like intensive, you know, speech therapy. He was having occupational therapy.
Yep.
He was having, you know, so that we were starting ABA. You know, I was trying some other things I thought would help him because he did really well with movement. So he's doing, you know, hippotherapy,
Yep.
gym therapy, you know, music therapy, like you name it. But also thinking later, like, oh, you know, when someone's in school, like, you know, they're in school environment, like there's only so many hours in the day, right? Or as they get older, what if they're in like, you know, a transition or adult day program? What if they have some sort of job training, or what is the situation? Like I'm a full-time single mom, you know, having to work, you know, and juggling schedules with like, you know, respite or whatever. And like, what are those demands like too? You know, that's a factor too, because sometimes it's a conflict where, you know, you can't ask another service provider to interact within an ABA or whatnot, right? So I guess my wheels start spinning, and then it's also already in my head like, well, this is sucks because I'm already stressed out enough.
Yep.
I'm always already concerned enough about my child, but then I'm feeling like you have to give, it's like all or nothing, right?
Yep.
Not cool. That's my reaction.
I've been really thinking about this because there's two things to it, right? Like one, the research is really clear. I just wrote a friggin' article about this in EP magazine and wrote a whole book about early intervention in ABA, right? The research is very clear that, you know, comprehensive programming, meaning covering all aspects of a child's life, like daily living, communication, play and leisure, community things, like covering all of that safety at an early age with intensive hours, kids make progress. Like the research is really clear. But this is the sticking point, right? For me, most of these ABA companies are, if they're doing it in home, require a caregiver to be present. And so that's the hard part. And so I've often and always worked in clinics where families could drop off. And you know, that's a whole other host of liability issues. But, you know, setting up situations where parents could come and work, right? Or, you know, do it like, so like as ABA practitioners, we've got to give a little bit. Like, so I'm stuck. Like, I know the research is there, but here's what Here's something that's in these CAS guidelines that are coming out that most people haven't seen, that I'm thrilled that they did, was they put in a section called care planning, patient preference, values, and collaborative decision-making. And while I was talking with these colleagues about this, it was sort of like people were on both sides. Some people were saying, listen, we are making a medical necessity recommendation. And it's kind of like saying you can't take only some of the insulin I'm recommending. You have to take all the insulin, right? So like, I get that argument for sure. But I also get the other side of it, where what you could do is set up like timelines. Like what if somebody said like, okay, for the next 2 months, could you make time for this many hours? And we're going to really target these specific things, and then we'll reassess. Or could we say like, okay, if you can't commit to all these hours that might help in all of these domains, let's pick 2 areas that might improve your quality of life right now, right? And focus on just those. I'm not promising delivering on all the other goals, but maybe, for example, the child, is young and not communicating well and struggling in certain things, but maybe I'm going to say, okay, if you helped with potty training and you helped with sleeping, those would significantly improve my life right now. What do you think?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. And those are 2 of our main things when we
Right?
first started. Also, I'm just going to throw in there, like the whole, I mean, I feel like it's very cookie cutter, and I'm sure it works for a lot of people, but, and it's not to mean obviously that I'm not going to like learn and follow through, but in my situation, Dylan, did better with, with therapies when, I'm not there.
True.
Yeah.
That is true.
So, I mean, it's true. I mean, maybe some other ones, not so much, but definitely with ABA or any sort of behavior intervention.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then there are some children that is definitely true for. So, I think that this comes down to me for like caregiver collaborative decision. I love that word. And they also threw in their case conceptualization, where they basically, you're assessing the child's skills and needs, you're interviewing the caregiver, you're reviewing documents, and you're starting to hear like what everyone wants. And so the other part of all of this is there are some families who are like, fix my child with autism, cure them, right? Move them forward. And I need as many hours as I can. And some children don't even need that many. So like as BCBAs, we have to be like someone likened it to me one time as like behavioral artistry, is we have to assess the whole picture. And if you're recommending 25 hours because you have these, 4 domain areas, and the family says, I can't do it. I've got children, I've got a job, I have other therapies. I feel like as a practitioner for a very long time that I would feel very comfortable saying, okay, let's pick these 2 areas, maybe like toileting and sleep. And once we do that, maybe we can tackle the next. But I'm going to tell you, progress might be slower across other areas, right? But to just say like, we're not taking anyone unless they fulfill all their hours, that to me feels like a money grab.
I was just going to say, to me, that would be a turnoff, because it just seems to me like they're just trying to pump to, get funds. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, in a nutshell.
But it's such
And
a
are most of these companies that are doing this, are they, or is it through insurance?
Yeah, it's all insurance paid. Yeah.
Okay. But I just mean, so that's a whole nother, dynamic. Yeah.
Yeah. But on the other hand, there's a part of it that I get, because it's much easier to staff someone if they know they're going to get a consistent 30 hours a week, for example.
That's true.
Versus trying to staff like these 6 hours and then 6 hours here and 6 hours there. And that's, I think, to me, this is like the biggest problem in our field, is we don't know how to like schedule all of these needs to like travel around to different places and fill in the hours. So our field has to get better at figuring this out, honestly.
Okay, so just when you were saying that, it kind of popped in my head too, like these companies and the hours or whatnot, a lot of times, depending on the kid, like a lot of times, some of the hardest times that you struggle with, that you actually need support and services for. Could be nighttime, could be the middle of the night, like
Yep.
it could be the weekends. But so are companies open to and hiring people and basing on that too? Like, are they really, like, if a parent is willing to say, yes, I'll do these hours, but this is like the hot the hot hour, as like I used to, Dylan, and not even till just recently, but his whole life he was up all night.
Yeah.
And like I would have behaviors and I'd have him like like throwing food away and tripping out and like banging on my door and stuff. Like, I mean, so let's say, I'm not even saying just like, hey, like these are the only hours I could do, but like considering too, like there are everybody has like different dynamics and different challenges for the individual. What if it's that what if it's 10 p.m. to 3 a.m.? Like, are they willing to do that? Because maybe not just logistically, but maybe that's the greatest need.
And I think telehealth has like opened the door for a lot of that,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like I know actually not too long ago, I was working with a family who was struggling with their child sleeping, and I was on telehealth with them until 10 o'clock at
Mm-hmm.
night
Yeah.
and watching to see what was happening and it was easier to do from my home, but I could still see what was happening. And so,
And a lot of times I think that would work too for certain people. Sometimes it's better. I
yeah,
mean, Dylan used to, I mean, he, you knew right away, Dylan either liked people or he didn't, or
yep,
he responded and he felt comfortable and got it and vibed with them, or he didn't.
yep,
And like, if it wasn't working, but sometimes he's more receptive of if it is like, remote.
yeah. The last thing I'll say about the guidelines that are coming out is that literally they talk about this. Studies show that parent stress is related to the severity of the child's autism symptoms and challenging behavior, right?
Yeah.
We know that. And that also the provider, that's BCBA's use of compassionate therapeutic skills
Mm-hmm.
to build an effective working relationship. And to me, that includes a collaborative decision-making model.
Mm-hmm.
And so I in matching culture and language, I don't know. I can't imagine saying to a family, if you don't, and what very well-known companies are doing this, right? And I
I'm
won't
sure
out
know
them,
most of them.
but yeah, but they're doing it. And they're hiding behind the guise of staffing. But
Mhm.
I'm just going to go on this podcast and say that I just disagree with, are we going to say it's all or nothing? And I get the insulin comparison, but it's not a comparison because the insulin you can have and you can deliver it yourself in a single dose with a single period of time. We're talking about hours of people's lives, right?
Mhm.
And if you can't be if like you've got to, as a BCB, be able to like organize with the family and just, to me, it's like expectation setting. I think all families would say, yeah, we'll make this life change and commit to this many hours for this length of time. And
Mhm.
afterwards, we could, like move from that kind of model to a more focused model. And the other thing is they're asking families to do it Monday through Friday during the day. And very rarely are people staffing and working Saturdays and Sundays where
Yeah.
families,
So that's what I was just saying, like, or evening, like,
yeah,
a
or
lot of time,
evening.
like a lot of times when I need the most help are like late afternoon through, before he goes to bed, like, but for even, that intervention. And then also that, I think too, like, instead of being like this many, it's kind of strange it's like that because there are times of the year and stuff that there's more behaviors, there's more struggles, and like, not that say that you can you save up or whatever, but there's sometimes when it's like, okay, like you said, maybe you need to focus on a couple of things like during this time. But as we know, like for example for Dylan, like when you had any sort of break, like winter break, spring break, the summer break, oh my God, the month of August, I just want to I was just like, because there's no other services, and that's when you're like, that's when the biggest struggles were, and like the
Yep.
most behaviors and the most tantrums, and like why, if you're really assessing and seeing like where the not just the areas that need intervention or support, but what about like even timelines like that, like thinking about like I know like we used to literally like gear up like my anxiety and stress and just even figure out, well, how the heck am I gonna work and like make this happen, like because like the month of August, like I was like terrified when it was coming up because there's literally no school, there's no there's no ESY, there's no like all the services that he was getting, and like so I just think people have to consider that too. Like, and what if, like, I mean, there are people not, okay, yes, I have my own situation, right? But I work full time. What if, like, someone's having a baby or someone's
Yep.
like, a lot of us, like, some people care for their parents and like
Yep.
have other medical conditions and stuff. Like, it's not fair. It's not cool. And if anything, that's going to put more stress and damage on the family dynamic and on the person that you're supposed to be serving.
Well, I'm so glad you said that because that's where my mind went to. Like, we
Mm-hmm.
know severity of autism also increases stress, but we also know the research shows that with kids with autism are more stressed than
Mm-hmm.
parents raising children that
Divorce, like, yep,
right
like,
don't have autism. And now we're
yep.
saying, hey, parent, if you don't do these hours we say, we're not going to give you services.
Well,
Like,
and then just so you already feel guilty enough and stressed enough, and like to have that also on your back is like not like it's harsh, and the expectation, which a lot of it is, I've seen it, especially if it is actually a lot of times the insurance companies are trying to also like mandate what the goals are, and
yep,
and the parent participation and parent follow through and all that, and that's a lot too. That's a lot of stress and a lot of demand, like, okay, maybe I'm here, like I said, Dylan does better when I'm not participating in it. That doesn't mean we always keep a communication log. We're always talking, I'm giving, tasks to do and I fall through. That's how I am, always have been. But, like you said, like giving people room to work and do what they need to do also. Like people have bills, but like how are people supposed to like live
yep,
and provide for this person?
yep. And I'm sorry I didn't turn my notice off on my phone, so all my Friday 4:40 texts and messages and
I know
emails are
you're
coming through.
good. Well,
I
I'm all
wanted to,
fired up, so you can't even hear him because I'm going off.
well, I just first want to say I laughed when you said you dread August, and I shouldn't have laughed. That's my inappropriate response to me
Well,
remembering you getting
yeah,
beaten up every
yeah.
August, right? But I
When you were talking about the telecast, I was just like envisioning more speakerphone of me calling you from the car when you used to hate red lights and you used to try to jump over the seat and take me out. And I'm like calling you and you're like telling me what to do. And we made it through somehow.
well, I kind of got on a soapbox for this one, but I just want to kind of close it. I wanted your perspective, which matched what I thought. I kind of led you
Mm-hmm.
down that path a little bit, although I tried not to because I didn't tell you
Mm-hmm.
our topic in advance.
Yeah.
But I definitely kind of led you, which I was definitely leading the witness, as we say, a little bit.
Yeah.
But
No.
you did,
You know how I roll.
I knew you'd respond that way. And so I just want to close it out with like the concept of this patient preference, values, and collaborative decision making. I'm so thrilled Cass put that in there. It's so huge. And I
Mm-hmm.
think BCBAs need to spend a little bit more time thinking about comprehensive versus focused intervention, and that there's some value to focused intervention, meaning if you're only helping a family a few less hours a week, make those hours very meaningful.
Make them
Don't
count.
Yeah, make them
Mm-hmm.
count. Don't try to do your 20 goals in 10 hours, right?
Mm-hmm.
Focus specifically on things that will change that family's quality of life. And you and I've talked about that, like quality of life. It's, are they safe? Are they
Happy.
happy, healthy? And do they have like some independence in a community kind of thing? So if we focus on those things, there's some workarounds here, I think. And, if you're working for an AB company says 25 hours or out, maybe that's not the place I would work. That's for sure. So
Yeah.
maybe I'm getting too old to be in this business. Maybe it's time to retire because I don't like the way that's going. But thank you, Jen, for answering that question.
Of course. Thank you.
And anyone listened this far, I appreciate you listening to this, and I hope you do. I will link the CASP site on our session note, but the new ones I'm reading from are not up yet. But thank you very much, Jen. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.